Students, welcome to my lecture on palworld. Now, what is palworld? Well, it's your bog standard survival craft 'em up, but with guns, fake mon, and slavery, I suppose. It's about as edgy as a middle schooler going through their goth phase. After playing it for several hours for this research project, I just gotta tell you that it's adequate. It's fine. To summarize the whole thing, basically Aldi came out with a packet of chips that looks close to another chip brand, and Aldi is kind of like, and the chip brand is going, and everyone's trying to figure out where they are right now, and it's a changing thing, and to be honest, the chips are fine. And the chips probably just taste better with friends. It's fine. Go into some chips if you want. I'd recommend getting it on Game Pass. Then why am I talking about it if it's just adequate? Well, look, it is a fascinating dumpster fire from beginning, middle, and end. The choices, the decisions, the design, everything, even the alleged plagiarism is fascinating. This game is a textbook example of why you need a designer. And for that alone, it's worth talking about. Okay, in the description, I'm going to put a timestamp if you just came here for plagiarism and some talk about Pokemon, or you can stay here and watch me talk about my safari in palworld, for boy, it is fascinating. Let's begin. Before we get into really anything, I probably should talk about the slavery, because, it's going to be a burning question, and it's not really that funny, it's just weird. It's a nothing burger, really. It's just a kind of excited serfdom. I kidnapped this man, yes, I left him at my base. I like to disappear on adventures weeks at a time, and when I come back, Manuel is still here. So, yeah, Manuel must like it here for some reason. Look, you can force pals to do harder labor, but that's pals as a whole. It doesn't really apply to just Manuel here. He's just sort of there, and he's not really that good at the base anyway. He just sort of hangs around with a big stick and wanders around aimlessly. I just got to keep him around because he's kind of interesting to look at and weird in his own special way, so I've just left him alone. The game is just being edgy because it's edgy, not because it's saying anything or doing anything interesting. This is one of the reasons you need a designer. You need a designer so that you've got a cohesive idea and you can shoot down ideas like, lol, we should just capture people as slaves. Or you could say, okay, then what? And as a designer, you can create a then what, but leaving it the way it is, it just there. And it says nothing and does nothing and it's just not really that exciting or that optimal or anything, really. It's a really lame joke with a shitty punchline. And I think I'm just going to end this part here and we're going to move on to some more interesting stuff, okay? The game didn't generally give two hoots about my bouts in slavery. It might care later, and there are probably better videos than me totally delving into slavery, but I only needed to see if it worked and what it did, and I have achieved those things. Something I do find interesting is the slavery thing wasn't really thought out, but what was thought out was your furniture and storage options. Basically, the difference between an ideas guy and a designer is ideas guy had some slots available or space available on whatever skill tree thing he bought off the rack and was like, you know what, I'm going to put furniture as part of this, and each bit of furniture you buy has slightly bigger slots. And on paper that makes sense, but there's two systems that he kind of ignored. First is the over-incumbent system, and then there is the death system, which is very awkward. It's just a cute little difference between designers and stuff. An ideas guy thinks, yeah, this is a great way to pad out my skill tree, while the designer is like, no, this destroys absolute flow. It really annoys some players who really like to collect and explore, because they'll have to come back to their thing, figure out which chest has got the shit in it, and etc., etc. And then when you get the new chest, it's going to be a really annoying time, because it's the over-incumbent system to put everything in a new box. Also, I call this thing a death commute when you die. It's from Dark Souls and Bloodborne and all those fun things. If you suck at games like I do, those sort of games where you need to get the rhythm, and sometimes your rhythm just ain't too sync, you can die and then you can commute. And the death commute is terrible in this game. So terrible. The thing is it wouldn't be as terrible if you could teleport to a nearby checkpoint, but no, you have to go back to your base, then wait a little while if it's late, sleeping because you get cold at night, and then you have to go to your base, teleport to the nearest fast travel point, and then beeline it over there, and it's a long, annoying journey. So yeah, it's just not cool to put this middle of slot little do this thing where you think item progression and chess thing should be in the same thing, because like I said, it just breaks flow, and flow is one of the most important parts of your gameplay if you're going to do it right. So here's the deal. Future Sword Dev here. I'm really sorry about this, but Unreal's not working on my computer because of technical issues, and a whole documentary about how to make a video game in Unreal, and this is the story of how I made one, and how I critiqued and saw the video game, Palworld just doesn't feel right, given my broken computer and my problem with finding patient zero of this whole plagiarism thing. Let me explain. We have two patient zeros, and one of them makes me feel really bad and gross, while the other one is like, yeah, I feel for you, buddy. I would have done it too. It was a shitty time for everyone, and I hear Japanese workplaces suck. So let's start with patient one, and then I will talk about patient two. Basically, patient zero was just a guy working at a convenience store, freshman year, didn't know a lot about 3D, made a couple of really nice models. I think it's like the deer, maybe the cow, the chicken, and the sheep, and whatnot, and maybe a couple of other ones. It's hard to really tell, but with Pokemon inspiration. And then they looked at the models and said, no, these aren't Pokemon enough, and you're making them too slowly, make them faster. And the guy not wanting to lose his job in the apocalypse just decided to do something that isn't exactly the best idea, but given the situation and the whole workplace culture, he just downloaded some Pokemon rules, sliced them up into little pieces, jammed them together, and then just put a nice coat of texture paint on him, and bam, you've got some Pokemon models. From there, because no one knew any better, it was a game of telephone where you just pushed it on the next person on the next person. And unfortunately, given the workplace culture of 2020 and everything that was happening around those times, everyone kept their mouths shut and just did their jobs. And yeah, you can't blame someone for that. And even the whole design of the world is like that too. It's like, yeah, you're missing some bits and pieces. Design choices aren't really that brilliant, but you're a bunch of dudes and you're working under pressure in a weird time and place. And yeah, I forgive you for that. It's been a fun time and it's okay. It's not brilliant, and I can understand where everything's going. The plagiarism aspects are a bit awkward, and at the end of the day, no one's really gotten hurt, and Nintendo can't touch them, so everyone came out all right. And it was kind of like a positive, kind of awkward ending. As long as people are enjoying it, doesn't hurt anyone. But then I cut a Wooloo in half, and then I've been feeling a bit awkward about doing this documentary. Basically, I cut the Wooloo in half, slammed it back together, and then with a little bit of work by just toying around with the assets, I got a lamb ball. And from there, I realized patient zero could be two people, and it just could be one of the people who was working up higher up in the office. And instead of it just being a bunch of people who kept their mouths shut because it was a terrible time and it was hard to speak up in those times, it was basically shitty Japanese work culture, and the boss is just pushing on these terrible, terrible monsters and on designs. And it wasn't just a guy who couldn't do it, was just not just a guy in a basement just going, oh my god, everything is terrible, how am I going to meet my deadlines? And it just doesn't feel like as good to say, oh yeah, those guys are going to get scot free. And that's sort of where I am right now. And I think people are going to do better documentaries, and maybe someday the proper information will come out. Way more exciting than my theory of it's a game of telephone. Some guy made assets, they got topologized, and then they went down and down the line. And yeah, those of basically they were new to the industry, had no idea how things worked, thought this was okay, yada yada yada. It feels gross. Also, Nintendo can now touch them without a good judge and a paper trail, which they don't have. If I was gonna guess anything, I guess FromSoft would be the people who would be interested if they could give two fucks, but I don't think they could. FromSoft could point to their level design and the world environment and say that these things are clearly their product because they are copied word for fucking word, and the environment and storytelling and everything else around it does not match up with the world and story environment. Dude, there's a guy with a guillotine and a spiky chair selling me chicken somewhere. But yeah, look, it kills the vibe, and I can't really do the other bits of the documentary, and I really wanted a funny sight gag where we hatched a businessman out of an egg, and the stock footage isn't brilliant, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm okay with just going, let's just leave this here. It was only kind of interesting, and I just don't really feel happy about telling people that, yeah, these guys are going to get off scot free. And that's about it, really. And look, if you really want to stick it to the man and you really, really feel dedicated, they have terrible. They didn't really make their game optimized. So if you could get a handful of your mates just to sit in a server all frickin' day, they will bleed through the fucking. They will be paid through the nose. But other than that, and maybe FromSoft getting pissed at them is the only way it will go down. Pokemon's got nothing on these guys, and I think yeah. I hope you guys have a good day. We'll pick this up when my computer gets fixed, okay? We'll do something fun together. Later.